the grand chamber of the Galactic Council was plunged into utter chaos. When I say chaos, I mean the kind that would make a supernova look like a peaceful afternoon picnic. The air hummed with the fury of conflicting voices, each one more desperate than the last. High Counselor Xena Starweaver's voice finally rang through the madness, booming across the vast hall with the weight of authority, her crystalline form pulsating with a spectrum of stressed-out rainbow colors. It would have been almost comical if I wasn't glued to my seat, calculating how many Parex I'd need to distance myself from this impending disaster. Where are my manners? I should introduce myself. I'm Ambassador Klex Brightheart, representing the Luminary Confederation. I'm watching, with grim fascination, as the galaxy's most powerful beings crumble before my eyes. Why, you ask? Because someone, somewhere, did the unthinkable. They committed the one sin that we've all been warned never, ever to commit. They killed a human, not just any human. They killed Captain Amanda Stone of the Earth science vessel Curiosity. Yes, that Amanda Stone, the same Amanda Stone who had recently discovered the cure for the Relian plague, saving countless lives across the galaxy. The same Amanda Stone who had 3 children eagerly waiting for her on Mars' colony. The same Amanda Stone who, by all accounts, was one of the kindest, most diplomatic humans to ever grace the stars. And now, she was dead. The Crimson Nebula pirates, the very ones responsible, claimed it was an accident. Their representative from the Silicon Consciousness squeaked nervously, their holographic form flickering in a pitiful display of uncertainty. "We didn't know humans were what?" snapped Ambassador Trill's Stardancer, her voice sharp as the point of a blade from the celestial accord. Her bioluminescent tentacles writhed in agitation, glowing brightly with a mixture of fury and disbelief. Weren't the warning beacons we installed across every major trade route clear enough? Don't engage in hostile actions against human vessels. How much clearer could we make it? Was it not in every diplomatic briefing, in every recorded message? I leaned back in my hover seat, my eyes narrowed as I watched the diplomatic disaster unfold in front of me. The warning beacons had been my idea, a precaution I had pushed hard for, my idea, not that anyone cared to acknowledge it. But here we were, with the galaxy's most powerful civilizations bickering like hatchlings fighting over the last nutrient pod. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I could feel the storm of emotions growing stronger with every passing second. There were murmurs of betrayal, whispers of revenge, and promises of retribution. Entire fleets were being mobilized as representatives from every sector screamed over each other. A deadly game of diplomacy had begun, one that could spiral into a full-scale war. And in the center of it all, the human race had become a symbol of fragile hope, and now a symbol of rage. The Crimson Nebula pirates had made their move, but they hadn't just killed anyone. They had killed someone whose death would rip through the fabric of this fragile piece that had held the galaxy together for centuries. Captain Amanda Stone wasn't just a scientist. She was a symbol of everything that had made humanity's rise so remarkable. A symbol of their resilience, their determination, and their kindness. A symbol now shattered. Ambassador Trill's tentacles flickered brightly in the chamber's ambient glow, her frustration palpable. This wasn't just a diplomatic failure. It was a violation of trust, and now we will pay the price. The chamber fell silent. 1,000 eyes turned to the floating holographic image of Captain Amanda Stone, the last remaining tribute to a life that had been extinguished far too soon. The weight of that silence felt like 1,000 tons, pressing down on the very foundations of the council. I couldn't shake the sense of dread that gripped me. This wasn't just an ordinary diplomatic crisis. This was a turning point in galactic history. The fabric of peace was about to unravel, and no one, not even the most powerful beings in the galaxy, could foresee where it would lead. Perhaps we were standing on the edge of something far darker. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of the end. The beginning of a war that would tear apart alliances, burn civilizations, and change the galaxy forever. And as I sat there, watching it all unfold, I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The deep, resonating tone of Elder Quantum Thought Pattern 7, emanating from the Machine Collective, echoed throughout the chamber. Its vibrational hum made the very air seem to tremble, stilling the thrumming of every nervous energy in the room. We should discuss appropriate responses to the human reaction, it declared in a voice that seemed to stretch through. The air, like tiny celestial bodies, froze in place. It was as if the universe itself had paused, waiting for something, the inevitable, the unimaginable. "What reaction?" came a hesitant voice from the back. I didn't even bother to glance in their direction. My focus was fixed on High Counselor Xena Starweaver, whose crystalline form pulsed with unnatural energy. Her light, usually so vibrant, had shifted into a particularly unsettling shade of deep purple, a hue that indicated high distress. This was no ordinary moment, and the dread in the air was palpable. "According to our latest reports," she said, her voice unnaturally calm, "every human colony in the galaxy has gone silent. Every trade route they maintained has been suspended. Every diplomatic channel has been closed except for one message." As her words sank into the tense air, the central hologram flickered to life, casting a cold light on the chamber. It displayed a simple, unadorned text communication in the human's primitive binary language. Diplomatic relations temporarily suspended, pending proportional response to acts of piracy against Earth citizens. Normal operations will resume once justice has been served. The words hung in the air, and for a moment no one spoke. Then, a representative from the Avon Leagues, his voice high-pitched with nervous energy, chirped, "Proportional response?" What does that mean? I couldn't help myself. A laugh escaped my lips, sharp, mocking, the kind of laugh that comes from the deepest pit of disbelief. It was as though I were watching a child try to understand the consequences of their actions. My laughter echoed through the chamber, cutting through the murmur of confusion like a blade. Every eye in the room, every optical sensor, every sensory appendage turned toward me. All the attention of the most powerful beings in the galaxy focused on one ambassador. "Oh, you poor sweet summer nebulas," I said, my voice dripping with irony, as I wiped the tears of laughter from my primary visual organs. "You really don't know much about human history, do you?" High Counselor Starweaver's crystalline form shifted again, this time with a sharp, ominous chime. "Ambassador Brightheart, if you have relevant information, relevant," I interrupted, my tone heavy with sarcasm. "Crucial. While you've all been trading with humans, accepting their medical advances, marveling at their primitive but charming technology, did any of you bother to study their military history?" I leaned back, letting the question hang in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The silence was deafening. It was a blank stare that answered me a look of complete ignorance. None of them knew. None of them had understood the depths of humanity's history, their survival instincts, or their relentless drive for war when provoked. I sighed, my breath deep as I pulled up my own data display. The glow of my screen illuminated my face, casting a pale light in the otherwise darkened chamber. The data I presented was clear, unambiguous, and undeniable. "The humans have a saying," I said, my voice steady, as though I were telling a simple fact. Mess with the bull, get the horns. A slow, predatory smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Though, in this case, it's more like mess with the species that perfected the art of warfare before they even left their own planet. The words fell into the room like stones dropped into water, ripples of realization spreading across the chamber. The silence thickened, expanding in every corner of the vast hall. Their eyes, wide and uncertain, darted from one to the other, the dawning comprehension slow but steady, creeping across their faces. For the first time, they were beginning to understand. The humans were not the naive, weak, defenseless creatures they had once believed them to be. Number. They were a species that had faced extinction, countless wars, and unimaginable odds. And through it all, they had evolved. Evolved not just to survive, but to conquer. They had mastered the art of warfare, not just in the galaxy, but within the confines of their own world before they even reached the stars. Surely they wouldn't. The thought lingered, unanswered. No one dared speak it aloud. The collective minds of the chamber, from the greatest minds to the most advanced beings in the galaxy, stood frozen in realization. And yet, one question remained in the air, unanswered, but undeniable. Would they respond? Ambassador Trill Stardancer's tentacles twitched in agitation. This can't be. No, surely they wouldn't. But her voice trailed off. Even she knew deep down that nothing could stop what was coming. The galaxy was about to be shaken to its very core. And humanity, they weren't just going to sit idly by, they would retaliate. They always did. The silence that followed was thick with a sense of dread, a feeling of inevitability that pressed down on the room like the weight of 1,000 falling stars. The storm that had been brewing for centuries, one born from miscalculation, arrogance, and misunderstanding, was now ready to break. And as I sat back in my hover seat, watching the galaxy's most powerful beings finally come to the realization of what was about to unfold, I couldn't help but feel the cold rush of anticipation. This was only the beginning. The fatal mistake. Blip, want to bet your silicon processors on that? I asked, my voice laced with amusement, watching the absolute panic unfold around me. Because the last time someone killed a human diplomat, oh, wait, this is the first time. Everyone else was smart enough to read the warning labels. As if on cue, the chamber's emergency alerts blared to life, their shrill tones piercing through the room like a sonic weapon. The central hologram flickered, shifting into a tactical display that froze the very air in the chamber. What we saw next made every eye in the room widen in disbelief. A massive fleet of ships emerged from Earth space, each one massive and imposing, starkly different from the peaceful diplomatic vessels humans were known for. These ships were not for exploration or trade. These ships were warships, machines of destruction that could rival anything the galaxy had ever seen. And suddenly, our most advanced warships seemed like toys in comparison. Well, I said, leaning back in my hover chair, giving a satisfied smile. I hope those pirates enjoyed their little moment of victory, because they're about to learn why humans put warning labels on everything. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into absolute chaos. It was a scene of utter pandemonium, with everyone scrambling, shouting, trying to regain some semblance of control. But this time, not even High Counselor Starweaver made any attempt to restore order. There was no need. Everyone in the room was too transfixed by the display in front of us. We all sat there, rooted in place, watching as humanity prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson, one about consequences. And me? I just smiled, because there was no better seat in the house for what was quickly becoming the most intense, most fascinating diplomatic crisis in recent galactic history. Sometimes being right is its own reward, especially when you get to watch everyone else realize just how wrong they were. Let me take you back to the moment everything went wrong. Now, not that I was there personally, I'm far too attached to my molecular integrity for that kind of reckless excitement, but thanks to the black box recordings recovered from the Curiosity, we all got to witness the disaster unfold in stunning clarity. The Crimson Nebula pirates, led by the notoriously arrogant Captain Rax Bloodfang, yes, the name was as ridiculous as the captain himself, had been tracking the Curiosity for 3 full standard cycles. They watched from the shadows, analyzing as the research vessel collected samples from the gas giants in the Proxima sector. They observed as the crew conducted their quaint little experiments, marveling at what Rax later described as the adorable primitive efficiency of human science. To the pirates, the humans were just another soft target, a species that had made its way to the stars, but one that still carried the naivety of its humble beginnings. The attack itself was a classic case of textbook piracy, if your textbook was written by an overconfident fool. The pirates' flagship, the Eternal Shadow, another name that was far too theatrical, dropped out of hyperspace, flanked by 2 support vessels. They surrounded the Curiosity with all the confidence of predators closing in on their prey, fully expecting a quick, easy capture. "Attention, Earth vessel," came the garbled, booming voice of Captain Rax Bloodfang over the comms, his mandibles clicking together with barely contained glee. "This is Captain Rax Bloodfang of the Crimson Nebula Fleet. Prepare to be boarded." It was then, in that moment of arrogance, that they made their fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The Curiosity, a simple scientific research vessel, had no idea what was coming. But the humans, they knew. They had known for a long time. And now, the galaxy was about to learn just how far humanity was willing to go when pushed too far. This was no longer just a rescue operation. This was going to be a statement, a lesson, a warning to anyone who thought they could mess with the Earthlings and live to tell the tale. But of course, the pirates didn't realize what they were about to unleash. What followed was no ordinary fight. The Curiosity wasn't just a research vessel, after all. It wasn't just an unsuspecting target. And those pirates? They were about to be taught a lesson in why humanity had been underestimated for so long. They would learn exactly why humans put warning labels on everything. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't just a quaint little human quirk. It was a necessary precaution. As the situation escalated, the calm before the storm turned into an unholy rage. The pirates, in their arrogance, never even saw the counterattack coming. Their eternal shadow began to fall apart under the onslaught. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. The Curiosity, the research vessel they had so casually targeted, became a force to be reckoned with. It turned the tide with devastating speed as humans revealed the true depth of their military capabilities, something they had carefully hidden from the galaxy at large. I couldn't help but watch with satisfaction, knowing full well what was happening. The galaxy had underestimated the humans for far too long. They thought of them as primitive. They thought of them as naive. And now they were about to learn the price of such arrogance. Humanity was no longer just a species to be tolerated. They were becoming a force, one that was ready to make the galaxy tremble. The chamber went deathly silent as the hologram shifted once more, showing the pirates' flagship breaking apart under the human counterattack. In that silence, I could almost feel the galaxy itself holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable fallout. And I, sitting at the center of it all, couldn't help but feel the thrill of being right. This was only the beginning. The pirates had made a mistake, a fatal one. But what was coming next? Humanity wasn't going to stop here, not by a long shot. As I sat back, enjoying the show, I couldn't help but think, sometimes being right isn't just a reward. It's a front row seat to the most thrilling spectacle the galaxy has ever seen. And I was lucky enough to have the best seat in the house. The humans were coming, and they weren't just going to teach the Crimson Nebula pirates a lesson. They were about to teach the entire galaxy a lesson about underestimating them. And I had no doubt everyone would learn the hard way. Resistance will be met with unfortunate consequences. The Curiosity's response was everything the pirates should have expected, yet somehow still managed to be a shock to them. It was typically human, direct, professional, and, in hindsight, far more patient than the pirates deserved. "This is Captain Amanda Stone of the Earth Science Vessel Curiosity," she replied, her voice calm, unwavering. "We are a research vessel operating under Article 7 of the Galactic Peace Accord. We have minimal valuable cargo and a crew of scientists. I suggest you reconsider your actions." The pirates, not recognizing the severity of the situation, erupted in laughter. It wasn't a victorious, taunting laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes from ignorance, the laugh of those who simply didn't understand what they were dealing with. The recording captured their amusement in crystal clear quality, a sharp contrast to the grave nature of the situation. Several of the pirates even made wagers, betting on how quickly the primitive humans would surrender. "Minimal, valuable cargo," sneered Rax's second-in-command, Vic's Shadow Strike. His voice crackled with arrogant confidence. "That's not what our scans show, Captain Stone. Those medical supplies you're carrying? They'll fetch a pretty price on the black market. The medical supplies in question, the cure for the Relian plague, were the culmination of 3 years of research by Captain Stone and her team. The cure that was meant to save countless lives in the colonies suffering from the outbreak. The one that was desperately needed by children, by families, by people fighting a losing battle against an ancient disease." Captain Stone's voice hardened, but there was no malice in it. Only determination. "Those supplies are needed for dying children," she said, the weight of her words cutting through the silence that followed. "Now, this is your final warning. Withdraw your vessels." The pirates, their arrogance clouding their judgment, chose to ignore her warning. They opened fire. Not a full barrage, mind you, but warning shots, the kind you fire when you think you're so superior that you forget the most important rule of the galaxy. Never, ever underestimate humans. The Curiosity's shields held. Of course they did. Human technology may have looked primitive to the advanced eyes of the galaxy, but it had proven time and time again to be resilient. And that resilience was precisely what the pirates were about to learn. Too late, of course. Human ingenuity and survival instinct had always been underestimated by the powers that be. And in this moment, humanity was about to show the galaxy just how far they would go and push to the brink. Captain Stone's voice, tinged with the faintest trace of resignation, came over the comms again, though her tone never wavered. "Very well," she said, transmitting ship's log and incident report to Earth Command, activating emergency protocols. It was then that Rax made his fatal mistake. Instead of recognizing the finality in her words, instead of realizing that the Curiosity had already sent out a distress signal to Earth, he ordered his gunners to target the Curiosity's engines. The shots connected with devastating precision, disabling the research vessel's propulsion system. What happened next unfolded in excruciating detail, captured by the Eternal Shadow's own security feeds. The boarding party, led by Vic's Shadow Strike, cut through the Curiosity's airlock, fully expecting to find a crew of cowering scientists. But instead, they found something entirely different. Captain Amanda Stone, clad in her environmental suit, stood tall, unshaken by the threat. Behind her, her security team was ready, armed with what the pirates had dismissed as primitive projectile weapons. It was a setup that defied everything the pirates thought they knew about humans. They had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. "Last chance," Captain Stone's voice came through her suit speakers, firm and commanding. "Leave now." Vix, displaying the kind of reckless survival instinct usually reserved for the most ill-fated of endeavors, ordered his team to open fire. The firefight lasted exactly 47 seconds, and when it ended, the Eternal Shadow's crew was left reeling. 3 pirates lay dead, 2 were wounded, and Captain Stone? She had taken a plasma bolt directly to her chest while pushing one of her scientists out of the line of fire. The Curiosity's medical AI, having recorded the entire encounter, documented her final words with a chilling accuracy. "Tell my kids," Captain Stone whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her final moments. "Tell them I love them, and tell Earth. Tell them to make it count." Through Vix's helmet feed, Rex watched, finally beginning to realize the magnitude of his mistake. But by then, it was far too late. The Curiosity's distress beacon had already been broadcasting since the first shot had been fired. Its quantum entanglement communicator had transmitted everything to Earth Command. The pirates had no idea what they had just triggered. Rax and his crew, oblivious to the catastrophe they had just unleashed, retreated, congratulating themselves on acquiring what they thought was a valuable prize. They viewed the loss of life as unfortunate but necessary, dismissing it with the cold detachment of those who had never truly valued human life. They even had the audacity to send a message to the Galactic Council, claiming that the human vessel had been the aggressor, that they had been forced to take action in self-defense. But that message, it was a lie, and a poor one at that. The truth was already in the hands of Earth Command, and the pirates would soon discover that their actions would not go unanswered. As the pirates retreated, thinking their victory was secure, the Curiosity's distress signal continued to pulse through space, carrying Captain Stone's final words and the evidence of the pirates' crime. The pirates had thought they could get away with this, but they had severely underestimated humanity's capacity for survival and its ability to strike back. The Curiosity's distress beacon was a call to action, and Earth Command wasn't about to let the loss of one of their own go unanswered. The pirates had made a fatal error. They had killed a human, a diplomat, a scientist, a mother, and now they would face the consequences. And as I sat there, watching it all unfold in the Galactic Council chamber, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. The humans were no longer the naive species the galaxy thought they were. The pirates would learn this lesson the hard way. And the rest of the galaxy? Well, they were about to get an unforgettable reminder of why humanity had survived and thrived against all odds. Captain Stone's death wasn't just a loss for humanity, it was a rallying cry, and the pirates, they would pay a heavy price for underestimating Earth's wrath. The silence before the storm. You know what the truly tragic part is? If they had just taken 10 minutes to research human history, they might have survived. They might have learned about concepts like proportional response or never leave an enemy behind. They might have discovered why humans put warning labels on everything, from their coffee cups to their starships. But they didn't. They saw what they wanted to see, a primitive species, a simple research vessel, and never stopped to think why such a primitive species had spread across the galaxy so quickly. They never wondered why every major power in the galaxy had non-aggression pacts with Earth, why the humans were so resilient, so connected, and why the humans were so resilient, so connected, and, dare I say, so quietly dangerous. They never asked themselves why humanity had been left to grow so rapidly, Why every civilization they encountered had made peace with Earth. Why Earth had managed to thrive in the face of adversity. They saw a soft target, a weak species, one that was small in number compared to the great empires of the galaxy, and because of that, they thought they could push them, exploit them, and kill one of their own without facing consequences. But now they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The humans have a saying, "Don't poke the sleeping bear." But the Crimson Nebula pirates didn't just poke the bear, they killed one of its cubs. And now the bear was wide awake, and it was coming for them. Have you ever watched a supernova about to happen? That perfect, terrible moment when everything goes still, that fragile quiet before the star collapses in on itself and tears the very fabric of space apart. That's what it felt like in the days following Captain Stone's death. The silence was profound. A silence so complete, so absolute, that it made your nerve endings tingle with anticipation. The galaxy was waiting for the inevitable, for the massive shift that was about to sweep through everything. The calm before the storm was like a storm cloud hanging overhead, waiting for the first spark of thunder to break through. The first sign came from Nova Era, Earth's largest off-world colony. Their regular shipments of quantum processors canceled. The weekly entertainment broadcasts that filled the airwaves and kept the colonies entertained terminated. The bustling trade ports where thousands of alien merchants from all over the galaxy normally mingled, clearing out in less than a solar day. Routine maintenance, their automated response systems claimed, as if they thought anyone believed that. The colony was a ghost town. The usual hum of activity had faded into nothingness. The streets, once filled with busy merchants, workers, and travelers, now stood eerily silent. No one knew why, but everyone felt it, that something big was happening. And then came Mars Colony, the crown jewel of humanity's presence in the solar system, where Earth's brightest minds met and shared knowledge with alien species. The universities, known across the galaxy for their cutting-edge research and advanced medical techniques, suddenly announced an extended holiday. All non-human personnel were escorted to transport hubs, their presence no longer welcome. The towering, transparent domes that protected the colony, which had once been a symbol of progress and openness, abruptly turned opaque. Environmental systems upgrade, they said. Another poor excuse. The truth was written in every empty building, every closed door. Mars was withdrawing. It wasn't just an upgrade, it was a shutdown. A shutdown that signaled to the galaxy that Earth had just drawn a line. The bear was no longer slumbering. It was awake and moving, and now the consequences were beginning to unfurl. The silence continued to spread, from Novera to Mars, and soon it reached every corner of the galaxy. The galaxy had been expecting Earth to respond, but no one knew just how. But now it became clear. Earth was playing a long game. The pirates and anyone else who had wronged them had miscalculated something far deeper than just the Curiosity's crew. They had underestimated humanity's patience, and now they were going to pay for it. The human response was not immediate. It was not loud. It was not a reaction. It was a revolution. Earth did not need to rush. The pieces were already in motion. The silence was the calm before an unstoppable force. Humanity was sending a message without saying a word, and everyone who was paying attention could feel it. What followed would be nothing short of extraordinary. The next sign came from Earth itself. After all, the planet wasn't just going to sit idle while its people suffered. As soon as the message from the Curiosity's distress beacon had been received, Earth Command began mobilizing. The fleet that had been carefully kept in reserve was now preparing for deployment. Every major human colony began to shut down trade routes, clear their ports, and lock down their systems. The resources that had once flowed freely across the galaxy began to dry up, as Earth made it clear that the galaxy could no longer take its prosperity for granted. The pirates, still celebrating their perceived victory over the Curiosity, had no idea what was coming. They thought they had won, thought they had pulled off a quick heist, but they didn't understand humanity. And now they would feel the full weight of Earth's wrath. The bear was awake, and its roar was shaking the galaxy. The pirates had no idea what they had unleashed. They had seen humans as weak, vulnerable, primitive. They had made a fatal mistake, one that would cost them everything. The silence before the storm. Plutonian next came. Mars Colony, their famous universities which had been teaching advanced human medical techniques to alien students, suddenly announced an extended holiday. All non-human. Personnel were politely but firmly escorted to the nearest transport hubs. The colony's massive dome shields, previously transparent, turned opaque environmental systems upgrade was the official explanation. Even the Luna Base Humanity's first off-world settlement went dark. The massive tourist attractions that usually drew millions of visitors closed the diplomatic offices, relocated to temporary facilities that somehow nobody could quite find. I watched for my office in the Galactic Council's Tower of Harmony as the reports flooded in trade vessels. Reported human ships quietly departing their regular routes. Monitoring stations noted increased ACAC IT around Earth's military installations. The humans were moving pieces on the board, but nobody could see the full picture. They're running scared, suggested diplomat Zorax of the Silicon Consciousness during one of our emergency sessions, withdrawing to protect themselves from further attacks. I had to bite my secondary mandible to keep from laughing. Tell me, esteemed colleague, when you scan human entertainment broadcasts, do you ever watch their nature documentaries? They're what? You know, those fascinating videos where they study their planets, predators. There's this wonderful creature called a tiger. When it hunts, it doesn't charge in, roaring, it goes quiet, it goes still, and then the implications made, Zorax's crystalline structure, vibrate with discomfort. Our long-range sensors started picking up unusual energy signatures from the SCI system, the kind of energy signatures that suggested large-scale fleet movements. But every time we sent diplomatic inquiries, we received the same polite, pre-recorded message. Earth, thanks you for your concern. Normal operations will resume once current security matters are resolved. Then came the really strange part. Human civilians usually found throughout the galaxy as traders. Teachers and tourists began quietly booking passage back to Earth. Controlled space. Not all at once, mind you, that would have been too obvious. Just a steady trickle, like water flowing uphill before a tsunami. The Merchants Guild reported that humans were liquidating their off-world assets at suspiciously reasonable prices. Academic institutions noted that human researchers were submitting their final papers and concluding their experiments ahead of scheduled entertainment venues, reported that human performers were canceling their upcoming shows, citing family emergencies. Perhaps we should send a delegation, suggested Ambassador Trill Starter during one particularly tense council session, show our support for their loss. Oh, yes, I replied, watching the latest sensor readings from Earth's military shipyards. I'm sure they'd love a bunch of diplomats dropping by right now. Just like how a plasma storm loves a radiation leak. The Galactic Council, in its infinite wisdom, decided to wait and see. After all, what could one species do? Humans were still considered relatively new to the galactic stage. Their technology, while impressive in sea areas, was thought to be centuries behind the major powers. That's when our deep space monitors picked up something interesting. The humans' orbital shipyards, previously used for building research vessels and cargo ships, had gone into overdrive. Power, consumption had tripled, raw material shipments had quadrupled, And the energy signatures, well, let's just say they weren't building more science vessels. How are they doing this so quickly, demanded High Counselor Starweaver during an emergency briefing. Their industrial capacity was never, what I interrupted, never measured, never accurately assessed. Did anyone ever actually verify what the humans were capable of? Or did we all just assume that? Because they were polite, because they focused on trade and research, they couldn't build warships. The silence that followed was deafening. And through it all, the Crims and Nebula pirates continued their operations, boasting about their victory over the primitive human vessel. They even started advertising the stolen medical supplies, apparently unaware or unconcerned about the storm they had awakened. But I knew I'd studied human history. I'd read about their wars, their strategies, their capacity for both mercy and ruthless efficiency. This silence wasn't the quiet of fear. This was the quiet of purpose, of preparation of a species that had perfected the art of war. Long before they reached the stars, the humans weren't retreating. They were positioning their pieces. They weren't hiding. They were hunting. And soon, very soon, the galaxy was going to learn why every human vehicle, every human product, every human installation came with those famous warning labels. As I sat in my office watching another group of human civilians quietly board a transport back to Earth space, I couldn't help but the storm was coming, and when it broke, it was going to be spectacular. The first strike came without warning. Well, technically there were plenty of warnings, but nobody was smart enough to read them properly. The Crimson Nebula pirates' primary base on Xerxes. 7 gone, not destroyed, not bombarded, just gone as if someone had reached down and plucked it from the surface of the planet. The council chambers erupted into chaos when the news arrived. I watched as the supposedly advanced species around me lost their collective minds trying to understand what happened. Impossible, screeched representative blip. Our sensors showed no approaching ships, no energy signatures, no warning. No warning. I laughed, pulling up the human original message on my datapad. What exactly did you think proportional response meant a strongly worded letter? That's when General Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force decided to make things interesting. His hologram appeared in every major government facility across the galaxy, simultaneously, not just in the designated communication areas, but everywhere. The fact that he could override our most sophisticated security systems like they were children's toys should have been our second warning. Greetings, he said, looking every bit the professional soldier in his black uniform. I'm here to announce that Earth has begun operations to address recent acts of piracy against our citizens. We appreciate your cooperation and staying clear of designated combat zones. Combat zones, Ambassador Trill, Stardancer's tentacles, twisted in confusion. What combat zones? Right on cue, every data screen in the galaxy lit up with a map showing dozens of red zones scattered across known space. The Crimson Nebula Pirates' territory had been divided into neat, organized sections. Each one had a scheduled date and time listed beside it. Earth's first strike for transparency. General Chen continued his expression neutral, but somehow terrifying. We will be systematically eliminating pirate threats in the marked areas. According to the posted schedule, any non-hostile vessels are advised to maintain a minimum safe distance of 2 light years from these zones. During operations, the Council watched in stunned silence as the first recording from Xerxes 7 played a human vessel completely unlike their usual designs had simply appeared in orbit. No hyperspace window. No warning. It just was there. The ship was angular, painted in some material that seemed to drink in light and bristling with weapons that our sensors couldn't even begin to categorize. That's not possible. Whispered Techmaster, prime of the Silicon Consciousness. Their stealth technology was assessed at level 2. This is at least level 8. Funny thing about humans, I mused. Watching as more footage poured in, They tend to keep their best toys hidden until they need them. The next few hours were a master class in military precision. Right on schedule at the exact times listed, human ships would appear near pirate installations. Some bases surrendered immediately. Those pirates got to keep their molecules arranged in their preferred configuration. The ones who resisted, well, let's just say the cleanup crews are still trying to figure out what happened to them, but their weapons protested. Ambassador Quantum thought, Pattern 7, the energy readings are off the charts. They're using technology that shouldn't exist. I couldn't help myself. Shouldn't exist or shouldn't exist in human hands, because I'm starting to think we made some rather dangerous assumptions about our friends from Earth. The humans' ground forces were even more impressive. Teams of soldiers in powered armor that made our best combat suits look like leisure wear. They moved with impossible speed, their weapons cutting through the pirates. Most advanced shields like they weren't even there. One particular team led by Commander Blake Rodriguez became something of a legend. Within hours, surveillance footage showed them infiltrating a pirate stronghold on Nebula's edge, a facility that had repelled full military assaults from 3 different species. Time elapsed from insertion to total control. 6 minutes and 23 seconds. This can't be right, muttered High, Counselor Star, weave her crystalline form, flickering with distress. The humans, they were peaceful. They were focused on science and exploration. They were peaceful, I corrected, because they chose to be kind of like how a fusion reactor is peaceful until you remove the containment. Field's director. Nah, Patel of Earth. Intelligence made that point, crystal clear in her only public statement for those wondering about our sudden military capability. I should point out that Earth has been at peace, not because we couldn't fight, but because we preferred not. To recent events have necessitated a change policy. The pirates learned this lesson the hard way. Those who surrendered were treated humanely, processed through proper legal channels, and imprisoned. According to galactic law, those who resisted they got to experience firsthand. The first day, 30% of the Crimson Nebula's operations had been neutralized. The humans didn't just destroy their targets, they systematically dismantled them. Each strike recovered stolen goods, freed slaves, and secured evidence of other criminal operations. It was like watching a surgeon remove a tumor, precise and methodical. The most terrifying part, the humans were clearly still holding back. Our best analysts estimated they were using maybe 15% of their actual military capacity, just enough to make their point without triggering a wider conflict. But why hide all this? Asked a junior diplomat during an emergency session. Why pretend to be less advanced? I looked around the council chamber at all these supposedly superior beings trying to process what they were seeing. Tell me, esteemed colleagues, if you knew your friendly neighbor had enough firepower to vaporize a small moon, would you have treated them differently? Would you have been so quick to dismiss them as primitive? The silence that followed was interrupted by another update. The humans had just taken out the pirates' largest shipyard. The facility had been completely surrounded by a field of quantum mines, protected by automated defense systems and hidden inside an artificial nebula. Total time from attack initiation to facility capture, 8 minutes, 42 seconds. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Trill, starter her tentacles, now a pale shade of terror. We should review our diplomatic protocols regarding Earth. I just smiled. The show was only getting started. Did quote as funny, how quickly a galaxy full of superior beings can change their tune. The emergency session of the council stretched into its 3rd day, as report after report confirmed what I'd been trying to tell them for years. Humans weren't just another emerging species. They were what my people call a sleeping giant. We've recovered historical data from their public networks, announced Techmaster Prime, their voice modulation unit, struggling to maintain composure. Their entire history is fascinating. I suggested enjoying this far too much a comprehensive catalog of increasingly creative ways to break things. The holographic display filled with images from human history, military campaigns, tactical innovations, weapons development, Earth's own records freely available to anyone who bothered to look, painted a picture that had the Council squirming in their seats before they even developed. Powered flight continued Techmaster Prime. They had weapons that could level cities before they reached their moon. They had bombs that could crack continents, and now we know what they've been doing while we were all patting ourselves on various appendages for being so advanced. I finished. They didn't stop developing weapons when they reached the stars. They just got quieter about it. The data continued to pour in. Those quaint human research vessels, turns out they could convert to combat configuration in under 3 minutes. The peaceful trading posts hidden military bases with enough firepower to hold off a planetary invasion. Even their civilian ships had weapon systems that made our military vessels look like toys. But they helped us, protested Ambassador Trill Starden. Sir, they cured diseases, helped with terraforming, shared their art and culture. Yes, I said, pulling up another data file, just like they helped the pirates understand the concept of proportional response, speaking of which the central display showed the latest casualty figures in just 3 days. The humans had disabled or destroyed 70% of the Crimson Nebula's infrastructure, not through overwhelming force or brutal conquest, but through surgical strikes so precise they could take out a pirate base without disturbing the civilian settlement next door. Their targeting, the truth about humans' systems alone, are centuries ahead of our best technology, muttered Quantum Thought Pattern. 7. How did we miss this? Because came a new voice, you saw what you expected to see. Director Na Patel's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. Unlike General Chen's military precision or Commander Rodriguez's battlefield prowess, she carried herself with the calm assurance of someone who had never needed to raise their voice to be heard. Humanity chose peace, she continued, because we learned the hard way that war only brings more war. We developed our military, not because we wanted to use it, but because we never wanted to be vulnerable again. You didn't see our weapons because we hoped we'd never need them. The council chamber was silent as her words sank in. These primitives, these newcomers to the galactic stage, had outmaneuvered us all, not through deception but through radical honesty hidden in plain sight. Your warning, beacons. High Counselor Starweave addressed me directly. You knew I read their history. I shrugged all 4 shoulders. The humans have a concept called deterrence. The best way to avoid a fight is to make sure everyone knows exactly how bad an idea it would be to start one Director Patel's hologram, listing combat capabilities. We even filed impact assessments for our weapon systems with the Council's Safety Committee, filed under Non-Critical Technological Developments, TECMAS, Prime. Nobody reads those. We do, said Patel. Every single report from every species, because information is the best defense. And now, thanks to some rather unwise pirates, the galaxy is learning why we take information so seriously. The display shifted to live footage of another pirate base being systematically dismantled by human forces. Their ships moved like dancers in a deadly ballet. Their ground forces operated with possible precision, and their technological superiority was no longer in question. But what happens when this is over? Asked Ambassador Quantum Thought. Pattern 7. What happens when the pirates are gone, Director? Patel's smile was both warm and somehow terrifying. Then we go back to being exactly what we were before. Peaceful explorers, traders, and scientists, because that's who we choose to be. But now, everyone knows what happens when that choice is taken from us. As her hologram faded, I looked around at my fellow council members, the supposedly advanced species who had dismissed humans as primitive because they focused on medicine, instead of weapons trade, instead of conquest cooperation, instead of competition. "Well," I said, standing to address the council, "I believe this concludes my long-standing petition to upgrade humanity technological classification unless anyone still thinks they're a level 3 civilization." The motion passed unanimously. Sometimes the best education comes from watching someone else learn a very expensive lesson. In the Crimson Nebula Pirates, they were paying full tuition for the galaxy's crash course in human nature. Have you ever watched a pack of wolves hunt the way they coordinate, without speaking the way they move with purpose, the way they never ever give up? Once they have the scent, now multiply that by a few thousand light years, add in technology that makes our best systems look like children's toys, and you'll begin to understand what happened next. The remaining Crimson Nebula pirates did what any sensible beings would do when faced with an angry human military. They ran. They scattered across the galaxy, hiding in asteroid fields, ducking into nebulas, bribing their way into supposedly secure facilities. It didn't help. "Target location confirmed," announced Commander Rodriguez during one of his routine updates to the Council. "Pirates designation Beta 7 through Beta 12, neutralized, moving to next sector. Neutralized, squeaked Representative Blip. But they were hiding in a quantum-shielded bunker inside a gas giant. Our sensors couldn't even detect them." "Yes," Rodriguez replied with a smile that could freeze plasma. That's what they thought, too. The humans had started using something they called hunter-killer teams. Small groups of special forces, operatives in powered armor that could outmaneuver our fastest ships. They moved like shadows between stars appeared out of nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. I watched the footage from their helmet cams during a classified briefing. The way they breached holes, bypassed security systems, and neutralized targets would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. One team led by Captain Sarah Winters took down an entire pirate cruiser without firing a single shot. They just walked through the ship's defenses like they weren't there. How demanded Techmaster Prime during the briefing? How are they penetrating our best stealth systems? "Oh, that's the fun part," I said, pulling up the technical specifications the humans had just declassified. "Remember all those trade agreements where they exchanged their sensor technology for our stealth systems? Turns out they were testing our defenses every single time." The revelation hit the Council like a quantum torpedo. For years, the humans had been gathering data on everyone's military capabilities. Not through espionage or theft, but through legitimate trade and technological exchange. They knew exactly how to counter every defense, because they'd helped build them, but surely they can't track everything. Suggested Ambassador Trill, "Start of the galaxy is the hunt." Vast right, on cue. General Chen's hologram appeared. Target update, Pirate Lord Bloodfang located in the Denor Sector extraction team en route, estimated time to capture 17 minutes. Rex had hidden himself in what we thought was the most secure facility in the sector. A private sanctuary owned by one of the galaxy's wealthiest crime lords, protected by technology from a dozen different species. The humans took it apart in 16 minutes, 43 seconds. Please note, Commander Rodriguez reported afterward that calm smile still in place. We could have completed the operation faster, but we wanted to ensure minimal structural damage to surrounding civilian facilities. That's when it hit everyone. The humans weren't just winning. They were doing it with one hand, tied behind their backs. Every operation, every strike,